Hey everybody, welcome back to Out of the Ordinary with Jay. And today I'm with
Kyle.
Kyle. And how old are you?
I am 46 now.
Okay, 46.
Yeah.
Okay. I like to give people some context about who I'm interviewing. And where are you from originally?
I'm from Bellingham, Washington.
Okay.
Yeah, just north of Seattle, between Seattle and Vancouver, BC.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're from Bellingham, Washington.
Yeah.
And today we're going to talk about businesses and being an entrepreneur. And this is the first time I've ever done this. That's some my background too, but I've been wanting to do this for a while. So thanks for being my first for this.
No problem.
What types of businesses do you own, or what are you involved in?
Oh man, right now I'm involved in I have a telecommunications consulting company, premier business. So we work with companies and help them procure different types of internet, cloud services, cybersecurity, phone systems. A lot of phone system upgrades right now. Just kind of walk them through the process of upgrading or hopefully saving money on what they're currently spending. A lot of people have legacy systems and they're spending way too much money.
So yeah, I was going to say that's probably you hear about all this stuff with AI and data centers and all that stuff. Yep. I guess small businesses and everybody kind of need that.
Yep. We're helping a lot of companies procure, get into data centers, getting off the hyperscalers like Amazon and Microsoft, because they're actually pretty expensive. Compared to like a private cloud.
Well, now you use some technology words I don't know about, but they sound impressive. So I believe you that this is your business. What other? Do you have any other businesses?
I have a retail. My wife and I have a retail thrift store in Ferndale, which is about 10 miles north of Bellingham, 5-10 miles. It's,
wow.
So we try to help the community and keep the prices low compared to some of the corporate thrift stores, and we work with different nonprofits to support them each month.
Yeah, it's interesting. I have found, I don't know if you've found this, I would imagine as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, you know other business owners, I assume.
Oh, yeah.
Right. It's funny how, like, I asked you if you had more than one business for a reason, because so many business owners that I know, they start off with one, and then it's like they get this bug or they get good at it, or they see, I don't know, like, is it just that you see opportunity, or what is it that gets you into?
Right now, I think I'm only at 2. At one point, I was like at 3 or 4.
Oh, wow.
So I do have some side things with investments and some other side things, but yeah, mainly those 2 businesses. I'm trying to get a little more focused. You get kind of scattered. You can't focus on one. If you're not focused, you can really mess up.
Yeah, there's an old saying, I forget who says, like, if you're focused on many things, you're focused on nothing.
Right. Yeah.
I get that, but tell that to an entrepreneur is what I say. So what's it like being an entrepreneur? Like, were you always an entrepreneur?
I've always had some sort of side business since I was like 18 years old.
Okay, so
always had
pretty young age.
Sort of, even though I was working maybe a 9 to 5, I've always had 1 or 2 side businesses going, trying to always chasing the dream. I don't like capped income. I'm not a fan of, this month I'm going to make this much, and that's as much as I can make.
Right. In other words, I'm a $50,000 a year employee. I clock in, Your idea is like, hey, I want it to be like limitless. I want to go as far as I can go. Yeah. That definitely is one of the things that would draw someone to being a business owner, being an entrepreneur, for sure. Also, sales jobs is another typical one. And often salespeople turn into entrepreneurs. That's pretty common too. So like, but what's it like being an entrepreneur?
I always tell people I'd rather make 50,000 being an entrepreneur than 300,000 being a W-2 employee. I like the freedom. I'm all about freedom.
Okay, I was going to say why, but okay. So your thing is you want to be sort of the master of your domain,
right? Yeah, time freedom is more important to me than revenue.
Okay, I hear you on that, but I'm going to give you a little bit of pushback.
Yeah,
because my experience with entrepreneurship is that's the way that it sounds.
Yeah.
And then I never worked so hard in my life. Yeah. I never put more hours into an endeavor ever than when I was a business owner. Yeah. Do you find that to be true?
Yeah, my saying is I'd rather work 80 hours than I'd work 80 hours to avoid working 40. Put it that way.
I got you. In other words, you just want to be like in charge, or at least not limited by. That is one thing I will say. Like, if a normal job, this is your position. As a business owner, position is endless. You could do whatever you want. That's true. Why did you do this? Like, why did you get into it? Was it just the reason of you wanted freedom?
I was actually I was working a regular job. I also had a side business, but I joined the National Guard. Got shipped over to Iraq, and after that experience, I got back, and I'm like, I'm going to figure out a way not to go back to the 9 to 5 job. just be a full-time entrepreneur. That was my goal.
I'm not going to do 9 to 5 anymore. I'm going to do 6 to 9.
Yeah, that's so true.
I'm just going to give up sleep altogether.
Yeah.
I found sleep's unnecessary.
Yep.
Yeah, I know. Speaking of that, like I know I've heard of entrepreneurs that have basically, they've done pretty well for themselves or whatever, but they've done the math and they've sort of like backed it out and they've said, well, gosh, if I would have just worked a normal job, I'd have made like more money.
Right.
But that is not, as you've described it, not as appealing to you because what you want is the freedom of your own sort of destiny, right? Is that kind of, do you think that's true of most entrepreneurs?
I think so. Yeah, that's for the most part.
I think
there's a lot of things on social media and makes it look all glamorous.
Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah, good luck with that.
Yeah.
Looks can be deceiving.
Yeah.
Very. Yeah, I think I know part of my entrepreneurship for myself personally and why I got into it in the past is I just remember I'd be with a company and I would be like, oh, they could just do this so much better, or this could be done so much better, or oh my gosh, they're leaving so much money on the table over here, or they're not servicing this amount of customers, and I was just like, it was just the opportunity just kept happening.
Problem solving.
Yeah, it's like, man.
Figuring out ways to better systemize everything and problem solving. Some people just like the challenge.
Yeah, I just had a hard time just generally seeing opportunity and being like, just letting it sit there.
Right.
Do you ever wish that you just had a normal job instead, or no?
Sometimes I'm like, oh, I just wish, I wish I wouldn't have to stress and think about things when you're off the not on the clock. You still kind of you're always thinking about different things and having to jump, put out fires and, so it'd be nice just to work your 8 hours and go home and not have to stress about everything.
Right. I don't think I've ever known an entrepreneur that was like, successful, that they could clock out mentally. Like, I just don't know of any, I don't think I know of one, because it's like, when they go to bed, they get a great idea at 2 a.m. Write that down, or they get something, they start emailing themselves or whatever. I mean, anyway, the other thing I was thinking about in businesses and about being like not working for yourself and working for somebody else is a lot of times that can be deemed or seen as more stable, particularly if you're working for like a big company, and there's just those, of course, everyone knows the statistics of most businesses fail, particularly small businesses, particularly new businesses. So like, I guess my question to you would be, what do you credit your longevity to? Because you've had your communications business for like a while, right?
Right. So like about 15 years, since 2009.
That's a really long time.
So we've gone through, you have to just kind of keep it have a mindset of the only thing constant in business is change. So being ready to pivot.
Right. Which is hard.
And adapt.
Which is hard.
Yeah.
Especially like in that world, technology changes, competition changes, needs of customers change. But yeah, it's 15 years you've blown past like all kinds of points that, like that would doom other places. Most people don't make it out the first year. If they make it out the first year, they don't make it out as 2 or 3. So 15 years is a long haul. What do you think you credit your longevity to? Like, what is it?
Just being willing to adapt and change. I think that's the main thing, and bring in the right partners and to work hard. This isn't an easy. You take on the entrepreneur life. It's not easy. So you just got to be willing to put the hours in.
Right. Which I always think is funny. Maybe we'll touch on this later. How I know sometimes, like, because I've been a worker too, as you have. You'd be a boss and a worker. But I remember when I was a worker before I was a business owner, like, oh, manager knows nothing, or the boss is so lazy. Look at him just driving around this nice car, and he just shows up. No idea. So what is the best part about being your own boss? Like, what do you like the most?
I think just like I said, the time, like I mentioned, time freedom, being able to say, okay, next week I'm going to take the week off, or, not having to ask for permission to take time off. I think that's the main thing. It's just the time freedom. And then the being able to kind of work more and make more, kind of like the salesperson's the same way, but being able to just be able to have an uncapped income.
Right. That was a bit of a loaded question, and I'll tell you why. Because the best part of being your own boss is, I think, as a former business owner, I could make the argument that I don't even know if that's true. Are you really your own boss?
Yeah.
The customers are in charge.
Yeah.
The vendors, key vendors are in charge.
The state's in charge of the tax revenue, the Department of Revenue.
Key employees are in charge. Like, I've had situations, I'm sure we like, oh my gosh, if so-and-so ever left, we'd be doomed.
Oh yeah.
Or, you know what I mean? Or if this supplier ever cut us off or changed the terms of our agreement, boy, we'd really be, and then, and certain customers, particularly if you have like a big customer that represents a big chunk of your business, I'm like, they're kind of the boss sometimes. I might think I'm the boss, but if they made demands or did whatever, we'd find out pretty quickly who was in charge, and it might be them in a lot of respects. I mean, do you find that happens?
Yeah, we had some retail stores, and they're about over an hour and a half away, and or we had 2 key employees there that actually stayed there for over 10 years. One of them is actually still with us.
Oh, wow.
And they learned the system so well that I couldn't do their job.
Right.
And then they're in that town, that community. They know everyone. I couldn't go there and I'd have to drive, almost 3 hours a day if I had to go and cover for them. Right. So if they ever left, being in that position, they are kind of in control.
Totally.
I don't understand the system.
Right.
I trained them on how to use it originally, but I don't remember how to.
Right. The apprentice has become the master.
Yeah.
No, and I would say this is about entrepreneurship and business ownership. That said, for workers out there, if you want to make the most money that you can, and you want to just make yourself indispensable, make yourself so good that everybody needs you.
Yeah.
So we talked a little bit about the best part about being your own boss. What's the worst part? Like, what do you wish wasn't part of the deal?
Payroll and taxes.
That's pretty good. Yeah. Payroll and taxes.
Yeah,
not fun.
The government is your biggest business partner.
Right.
That's what I say. I mean, because there's so many, you're spending so much on taxes, and it just keeps going up. So it's
right. And I also, and plus you have, I don't know about your particular businesses, but I know businesses I was involved with in the past. You have a particular reporting requirements. Over and above just like even like taxes and all those things. And so and you've got workers' comp, and this is just so. There's
now you have sick pay required.
Different kinds of insurances. Yeah. I think I don't know what the worst part of the deal is for, like, if I was to answer that question, like what's the worst part about business ownership? The only thing I would say is that, and it's kind of like a double-edged sword. The buck stops with you, but also like. The buck stops with you. Like at the end of the day, it's all you. Or you're the one with the potential liability. You get all the upside and all the freedom, but you also have all the liability, all the target on your back, and all those things. And so, I don't know if that's what I would say, but I don't remember liking that very much.
Yeah, definitely.
Speaking of the worst part, what do you think keeps you motivated, or how do you stay motivated when things get tough? Because at least from my memory, things get tough like a lot. Like it's not like, once a quarter, here comes a tough period of time. It's like you could have 4 tough things in a day,
right,
or several tough things in a week. How do you stay?
I think when those big wins, when you implement a system and it works, I think just getting the satisfaction of seeing something work that you implemented. And seeing the customers come in and seeing those deals close, I think
there is a little bit of a buzz from that.
Yeah,
no question. Right. So it's the next, what could happen next, or what you might accomplish next. There is something to say. I agree with that. I think that's really good, because I remember like you would go. There'd be some. I'm not going to go into specifics of my own situations that I've had, but you'd have really a big obstacle that maybe you had no knowledge how to solve. It's brand new to you, and it could be deeply impactful to business, and you're just trying to like mow through it and learn and get resources to try to figure this thing out, to get over the hump. And there is a big degree of satisfaction when you conquer something like that.
Right, definitely.
And so you get to conquer often in this business, whether you like it or not, if you're staying in business.
Yeah.
We might have dabbled on this a little bit, but I'm just going to ask it this way. What do you think is the number one skill needed to be a successful entrepreneur?
Problem solving.
Problem solving. You think that's the number one?
Yeah.
Oh man, that's pretty good. Yeah, you're right, because I have a different answer, but I think your answer is better. You're right, because that is sort of entrepreneurship in a nutshell, or at least successful entrepreneurship in a nutshell, is just problems are just going to come at you day in and day out. Doesn't matter the idea, doesn't matter the business. I mean, look, you have a thrift store and a communications business. Those are very different businesses. Yeah. But still, it's the same. It's problem solving, just different problems. I think it would be helpful to be a creative person, don't you, to be an entrepreneur? Not really, just because problem solving can take so many shapes and forms. I think I'm going to take your answer, but I'll tell you the answer that I did have.
Okay.
I put tenacity, the ability to endure pain and get back up time and time again. And then the other one that I think, and I'm answering it more in one way, but the other thing I think, and this is where I think there's a fallout between the employees and the employer oftentimes, is discipline to do the basic blocking and tackling. You know, opening the store on time, closing the store on time, making sure things look right, making sure the phone gets picked up and answered, making sure the marketing, you know, making sure you're searchable on Google, you know, all the basic stuff that is so boring and not fun, but is a requirement of the business. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's so true.
Nobody likes to do that. Not employees, not the owner, but it's like a requirement to have the door that you can see through and it opens up when it's supposed to. Anyways, speaking about employee and employers, I think that there's a dichotomy between employees and employers. I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but let me explain what I think it is, and you tell me your opinion of it. And I just see this as something that cannot be solved, and that is this: as an employer, as the business owner, as the entrepreneur, as the boss, you want to get as much great work as you can out of the employee for as little money as possible. Conversely, the employee wants to do as little work as possible for as much money as they can get. Right. How does that work? How do you square that circle?
Definitely a balance. And I think every day they're just going to do the very bare minimum for the most part. Most employees are going to do the very bare minimum to get by. Right. I think if you just what I think about is, you know, if you show up on time and you get the job done, my whole thing is I don't like, even as an employer, I don't like the fact that employees' money, that they're capped, their income. I like to have them, motivate them with some way to earn more. From a thrift store, it's a little bit more difficult because you can't really pay commission, but on a sales side, always figured out a way to pay them, you know, the basic hourly rate, but also have some way for them to make more money.
You want to go kill it? You want to go kill it? I'm in it with you, right? Yeah, I like that. I was just thinking, you made a good point there about, and it makes sense, right? From their perspective, they would want to do the minimum for their pay, just like we don't want to, as an employer, you would want to pay the minimum to get the maximum out of it. Right. But I was just thinking, you said that a lot of them, or a fair amount of employees would do the bare minimum. I was thinking, it's so true, because inevitably, if you have one of those that's just like a rock star high performer, they go on to be the next entrepreneur, and very often will even compete with you because they've found a better way to, you know, they've built a better mousetrap. And so it's kind of like, man, trying to find a really great worker that's not so great or whatever, doesn't have so much ambition that they go off and compete with you. Right. That is like the sweet spot that is very difficult.
We've hired entrepreneurs in the past that had side businesses, and I think as long as they didn't have a cap on their income, I think they were good workers. As long as they had a way to put systems in place to allow them to make more money, I think that was always important when we hired entrepreneurs.
Yeah, I think I think I agree with you. One of my things that I remember doing is I had a couple over the years. I had a couple of people that were they were rock stars, and I was very conscious of this idea. I'm like, they're so good. They're just going to leave. I don't need, they're doing so good. And I would just be honest with them, and I would just approach them. I was like, listen, you're so good. You could be doing this like on your own. I would just be very forthright. I'm like, how do we stop that from happening? Right. How can we make our joint effort with this company a better opportunity than you going off on your own? And sometimes you cannot, but at least I like to have that conversation if you end up with one of those great employees. What have you learned by being a business owner? Because I feel like it's its own sort of college. It's its own sort of tuition. It's its own, you know what I mean, thing. What have you learned?
I've learned that anything can happen. I mean, we've had employees that had some issues where we had to step in. we had one guy that wanted to act like a bouncer and basically manhandle someone
What?
and push him out the door. We've had,
in what type of business was
I
that?
wouldn't say sexual harassment, but we had complaints in that regard. We've had everything come up. We've had employees call us and say their coworker, comes to work smelling bad. I mean, it's
everything.
Situations like that. You expect you're going to have all kinds of crazy stuff.
This goes back to your problem solving. You just named three things that probably most business owners would have never even guessed, and those were things that you had to tackle and overcome. Yeah, I think definitely being a business owner, if you're going to have customers. It definitely is an eye opener to human psychology. You can't please everyone. I know that.
Oh yeah.
I put in my little notes. I put, you can't please everyone. I go, but bad reviews suck.
yeah.
So you better try, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I remember I had a couple businesses where one of the businesses I had thousands and thousands of customers annually, and I just remember this person was being so unreasonable in what they wanted or whatever, but they kind of had me over a barrel because it was a review-based business, that wherever bad review mattered. And I was like, so I just capitulated and just gave in, even though it was it's I have an attorney friend of mine, and he goes, one of our favorite phrases are, "I'm doing it for the principal." Right. He's like, because I know it's going to cost them a lot of money, but sometimes you just have to just eat it.
And we ship stuff on eBay and Amazon, and those people, they have you over a barrel. They're going to give you a bad review on eBay.
Right.
Really
Exactly.
So I mean, most of the time I just give in and say, we'll give you a refund, keep the item. I don't even want it. I mean, it's not worth the hassle. Most people are honest, though, believe it or not, but you do have those people that just are unreasonable.
On the stuff you're selling on eBay, what % would you say are like that?
I'd say it's probably less than 1%.
Oh, that's really good.
Yeah.
I will say this, you're very wise, in my opinion, and I think the opinion of most entrepreneurs, to take on that stance, which is to say, hey, you're not happy with it, whatever. You may be completely wrong. I think you are completely wrong. We but I'm just going to just keep it and whatever. That's sort of an Amazon thing, a Costco thing to do. But I think it's very wise, but I also think it's very hard for a lot of people, particularly when you're like, oh, they're screwing me. They're, they're just they're pure evil or purely, scandalous.
Right.
I don't know.
Or someone brings in a coupon that's expired, someone's just like, well, we'll go ahead and take it this time. And it's just have to make them happy.
Right.
It's just the nature of the beast.
Yeah, it is part of it. Yeah. So what does success look like to you?
I think success for me is just having a really good business system and happy employees and happy customers. That's basically it. And when it comes to business, just happy employees, happy customers, and have a really good system that you can kind of walk away from and not have to, micromanage every day.
Okay, so it's not $1 million?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, money's obviously. I think it's kind of a byproduct of the whole thing. But,
yeah. I think once you've been in business for a long time, I mean, I always, it's funny. I remember in the beginning stages, early on in business, getting money in, it was almost desperate. I've got bills to pay. I got to eat. I got rent, right? But then as the business gets more mature, even if you're still not making a pile of money, it's almost like it becomes more like a scorecard than, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're like, oh, we had a killer month. It's almost like you hit the 3-pointer or something. You know what I mean? As opposed to, I don't know. It's kind of a weird, I don't know.
But obviously it comes down to profit and not just revenue. I mean, you can make.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I know. I always wondered that. I know it's I was in lending for a while too, so I understand. But how lenders work, often when they look at a business and they're going to want to loan money, they look at cash flow, how much is coming in, how much is going out, what's the frequency of that, as opposed to profit. And I was like, don't you care if they make a profit? And they're like, no, we just want to see that they have enough money coming in to make that mortgage payment or whatever. And I always thought that was kind of like a weird, metric. I don't, and I was in lending for a long time, but I still, anyway, it is what it is.
Yeah.
Last couple of questions, and I'll let you get back to your businesses.
Oh, yeah.
So I know you're busy. But if you could go back and give your younger self advice, what might that be?
Oh, man. I think
because just you said you started kind of at 18.
Mm-hmm.
You're 46 now. Mm-hmm. That's a lot of years of experience to give yourself some advice way back then. What would you come up with?
Yeah, I'd invest more. I definitely would invest more of the money and just be a little bit smarter on the money side of things.
You mean invest outside of your own business?
Yeah, or into other businesses. Just be a better investor. I think taking some of those profits and putting them to work, putting your money to work, it makes a lot more sense. You don't have because as a business owner, you don't have necessarily a pension or retirement. You have to kind of create your own nest egg.
There is no 401k.
Yeah. And I would probably have bought more real estate that because at one point we had about 7 or 8 buildings that we leased in my telecommunications business when we had retail. And it's just, I would have figured out ways to kind of
have the building,
that real estate,
and minus a couple of years, that probably would have been a good move. If you bought it in 2007, not so great.
Yeah.
I think that's really good advice. And I think that's one, when I was first starting out, somebody had given me that advice and I totally discounted and didn't listen to them. Of course, like I never listened to so many other things, but they were basically, the idea was pay yourself first, and I always disregarded that. I'm like, no, it's got to all go back in the business. It's got to all go back in the business. Yeah. And I think there's a lot of wisdom in paying yourself first. Like I had an accountant that's like, dude, just take 10% or not even that much. Just take whatever, $500, $1,000 every month and put it somewhere else. And I never understood it, but I understand it more now, which is if you don't do that, the case that you're making is you're not diversified in any way. You are subject, your entire livelihood is subject to your businesses and the dynamics around that business and your ability to run them. Heaven forbid you get hurt or something like that. So I think that's really good advice, would be like take some money off the top. Like just make it a bill. Just like you would your lease payment or your utility payment. Say, $500 a month has to go here every month.
That and then compounding power is just so powerful.
Exactly. Compounding power, and you're forcing diversification away from yourself in case something. Yeah, I think that's really good advice. Well, at 46, you still have many years to do this. You could just take your advice right now.
Yeah.
Okay. This is the last question, and that I think some of the viewers might be interested in, which is, and by the way, if you're listening and you like this at all, or you want to see more entrepreneurship or business videos, like, subscribe, and comment to me. I know plenty of business owners, and I think this would be a fun thing to go down. But my last question is, would you recommend business ownership to others?
I think for the right person, yeah. I don't think it's for everyone. But, I think for someone that's got tenacity, like you said, and
problem solving, like you said,
problem solver, and you have to be fairly organized too. I think if you're, and I think taking on too much debt could be, some business owners want to take on a bunch of debt, which can always be a challenge. But yeah, I don't think it's for everyone, but for the right person, definitely.
Yeah, I think on the debt issue, that works both ways. Because on the one hand, there's a lot to be said for sort of, bootstrapping it and guerrilla marketing and all of that stuff, which I think is very valuable. And you're going to do, by the way, anyways. I don't care how much money you have. But also, if you put yourself in debt, it depends on how you put yourself in debt. If you borrowed money from all your friends and family and you value those relationships, being under that debt load can make you work really extra hard. But it also can provide an insane amount of extra stress. And so I think I would fall more on your side in terms of the least amount of that you can get away with, the better. In terms of recommending business ownership to others, I guess my question would be probably, I think, to people would be like, well, outside of, do you have the skill set? Are you, do you have the tenacity? Are you good at problem solving? Do you believe in your idea? We'll be like, why are they doing it? Because I think that can matter, because as an example, I think and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, but I think a lot of people conceptually that maybe haven't done it yet or are new into it, get into the idea of like, I'm going to get into it. I'm going to make all this money so I can be free to spend all this time with my family, right? Not really comprehending just how much family time they'll be sacrificing for years before that even becomes a possibility.
Right.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I can go back and think of times where I was putting in, 60, 80, 100 hours a week and not seeing my family at all.
Right.
trying to build the business.
Right.
Or being gone on, I actually had a trucking company for a while.
Yeah.
That was a mess, but
wow. So that's another one. Yeah. Once an entrepreneur, always an entrepreneur.
That is gone.
It's an addiction,
all
folks.
over Texas, and oil fields tried to hire drivers for these trucks. It was
to your point on that, I will say I have seen, like, because I know a lot of business owners, and I have seen spouses. Mm-hmm. Usually it's the male, but not always. Mm-hmm. And they'll be at a crossroads in their relationship mm-hmm. and in the business, and the guy will inevitably say something like this: well, I'm doing it for you,
right.
or I'm doing it for the family. Mm-hmm. And you could just see the poor wife's face, like, he really is that clueless. You know what I mean? Like, we just want him around now, mm-hmm. today, while the kids are here,
right.
or whatever. And that disconnect, mm-hmm. and he really is doing it mm-hmm. for the family. That's authentic. That's real. That is what. And meanwhile, she's like, yeah, but there's a different way. Like we want you here now. And I think it's very difficult for entrepreneurs to strike that
right.
balance. Don't you think?
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Okay. So the last question was, would you recommend business ownership to others? How did you answer that again?
I was saying, I think it's not for everyone. It just depends on the person's, if they're a good problem solver, they're willing to take a hit, and they're willing to work very, very hard, and it makes sense for them. Otherwise, if they're not willing to work nights and weekends,
you're wasting your time.
Yeah.
I think we'll leave it there. Kyle, thanks for your time, and thanks for the interview.
Appreciate it.